No one at the Midnight Cafe expected anything unusual, but the moment Leora stepped through the doors, something in the air shifted. It was the way she held for breath, the way she clutched her little hollow notebook, the way her eyes darted toward the far corner where Orion Vance sat alone beneath the soft glow of the starlight lamps. To everyone else, Orion looked like another quiet researcher finishing a late shift. To Leora, he was the one person she had promised herself she would confess her feelings to before the cycle ended, before life pulled them in different directions again. She had rehearsed the words 1,000 times, but standing only a few steps from him, her heart thudded so loudly she wondered if the cafe's soft music even covered it. Orion didn't see her at first. He was lost in the shimmering blue projection hovering above his palm, celestial maps reshaping themselves with every slow gesture of his fingers, like he was drawing constellations out of thin air. Leora swallowed hard, thinking he would brush her off. He always seemed so distant, so unreachable, like someone who lived half in the real world and half in the stars he studied. She took a step closer. Her courage wobbled. Her voice almost vanished. "Orion?" He froze. The projection dissolved instantly, a tiny spark flickering out as he lifted his head. And then he looked right at her. His eyes, soft gold under the lamplight, widened in a way she didn't expect. Not annoyed, not distracted, not distant at all. He was surprised, genuinely surprised, and something else she couldn't name. "Leora, what are you doing out this late?" he asked, his voice gentle, almost cautious. She forced a small smile, trying to keep her nerves hidden. "I needed to talk to you about something important." He leaned back slightly, giving her his full attention. That alone startled her. Orion didn't give anyone his full attention, not easily, not often, and certainly not after midnight. "Sit," he said softly, motioning to the seat across from him. His expression stayed curious, but there was an unexpected warmth in it, too. Leora sat, hands trembling just enough that she folded them together beneath the table. She tried to prepare herself for disappointment, for a polite refusal, for the distant smile she'd seen him give so many others. But Orion didn't look distant now. He looked concerned, as if her being here mattered more than she realized. "What's on your mind?" he asked. Her breath hitched. She could feel the confession rising, a quiet storm she had held in far too long. For weeks, maybe months, this moment lived rent-free in her heart. Every late-night study session, every accidental brush of their hands, every time Orion said something soft without meaning to, every time she caught him watching her, as though she was something quietly remarkable. Now she was here, face warm, palms sweating, courage wobbling like a fragile star in orbit. "I wasn't sure if I should tell you this," she began. His gaze sharpened, but not unkindly. He leaned forward, elbows resting lightly on the table, the glowing lamplight softening the shadows across his face. "You can tell me anything," he said. The certainty in his tone almost broke her. Leora inhaled slowly, bracing herself. "I thought, if I said this, you'd ignore me, or pretend you didn't hear me, or just walk away." Orion frowned, not confused, but protective. "Leora, I would never ignore you." Her heart stumbled. Those words alone nearly unraveled her. She swallowed again, trying to steady her voice. "I need to tell you the truth about how I feel, and I know it might change things between us." For a moment, he didn't move. The cafe lights shimmered around them. the quiet hum of midnight settling like a soft blanket over the room. Orion's voice dropped to a whisper. What truth? And at that exact second, right before she spoke, the cafe door chimed behind them. A cold breeze swept through. Someone stepped inside, and everything in Leora's chest tightened. She wasn't sure why, but the look on Orion's face shifted, just slightly, as if he sensed something she didn't. The confession balanced on her tongue, moments from release, yet somehow the moment was no longer simple. Not simple at all. If you're enjoying this story so far, please like the video and subscribe for more heartfelt tales. Leora drew in a trembling breath, ready to reveal everything, when a voice from behind her whispered her name. The moment Leora heard her name spoken from behind, her pulse faltered. She turned slowly, finding a figure she hadn't expected to see at this hour. Eris Talden, a fellow researcher known for her sharp mind and even sharper timing. Eris wasn't unkind, but she carried an energy that made every room feel tighter. Tonight, however, she looked uneasy, almost hesitant, as though she regretted interrupting the moment. "Sorry," Eris murmured. "I didn't mean to startle you." Leora managed a polite nod, though her heart was still racing from the confession she almost delivered. Orion stood a little straighter, his expression shifting into something guarded, protective even. "What's going on, Eris?" he asked, his tone more serious than before. Eris hesitated, glancing between the two of them. "It can wait," she said quietly. "Please, continue." But the moment had already slipped away, like a star disappearing behind clouds. Leora's breath wasn't steady anymore. Her courage wavered, hanging by threads she wasn't sure could hold. Orion saw it. His brows tightened, subtle but unmistakable. He turned back to her, softening his voice. "Leora, whatever you wanted to tell me, please don't let an interruption stop you." But she wasn't sure she could force the words out now. Not with someone else here. Not with her heart still thudding against her ribs like it was trying to escape. "I need a moment," she said quietly. Eris stepped back, giving space, and Orion exhaled slowly, as though trying to steady the atmosphere around them. "Do you want to walk outside?" he offered gently. The suggestion surprised her. Orion wasn't the type to leave his work tools behind, especially when they were still flickering faintly with constellations he'd been mapping. Yet he powered everything down without hesitation. Leora nodded, and the two of them stepped out into the cool night air. The street was quiet, the soft neon glow of floating lanterns reflecting across the pavement. It felt like the kind of place where truths belonged, where they could drift into the air without fear. Orion walked beside her, hands tucked into his coat pockets, gaze drifting toward her every few seconds, as if checking that she was all right. "You know," he said softly, "I wasn't ignoring you earlier. I just didn't expect you would come find me tonight." She looked down. "I was afraid you'd push me away." "I wouldn't." His voice held an earnest weight that made her chest tighten. A soft breeze swept between them. Lanterns pulsed gently overhead, as if sensing the unspoken tension. Orion slowed his steps. "Leora, everything you've said tonight, it means something to me, even if you haven't said it all yet." Her breath hitched. "It does?" He nodded. "I notice more than you think." She stopped walking. He stepped closer. There was something in his eyes, warmth, yes, but also curiosity and an unspoken hope that startled her. He lowered his voice to a near whisper. "What truth were you trying to share with me?" Her fingers curled into her sleeves. The words hovered on the edge of her tongue again. "I care about you," she said softly. "But there's more to it than that. I just don't know if saying it will complicate everything." Instead of pulling back, Orion's expression grew even gentler. "Some things are worth the risk," he murmured. Before she could respond, the cafe door opened again behind them. Eris stepped out, looking pale, almost shaken, holding a small hollow slate in her hands. "Orion," she called gently, "I'm sorry to interrupt again, but you need to see this." The timing couldn't have been worse. Leora's heart fell. The moment fractured again. Orion looked conflicted, torn between urgency and staying with her. He turned to Leora, voice low. "I'm not walking away from this conversation. I promise you that." She nodded, though uncertainty buzzed through her chest like static. He stepped over to Eris, brow furrowing as the hollow slate activated between them, glowing with shifting data. Leora watched their expressions shift, first confusion, then concern. Eris whispered something she couldn't catch. Orion looked over his shoulder at Leora, eyes filled with something heavy, something he wasn't ready to say out loud yet. Whatever they had seen, it wasn't simple. And Leora suddenly felt the night tilt, just slightly, as though something much bigger than her confession had just entered their orbit. The night felt colder as Leora stepped closer, trying to read Orion's expression. He held the hollow slate between his hands like it carried something fragile, something unexpected. The glow painted soft blue light across his features, revealing a quiet tension she had never seen in him before. Eris shifted uneasily beside him. "I've found this in the data room," she murmured. "It's tagged under your name, but I don't think you put it there." Orion tapped the edge of the slate. The projection expanded, showing star charts, familiar ones, yet rewritten in ways Leora had never seen. Entire constellations rearranged, trajectories altered, a pattern forming that none of them immediately understood. Leora stepped closer. "What is it?" Orion shook his head slowly. "I'm not sure, but someone wanted me to see this." He looked over at Eris. "And you're certain it wasn't from anyone on our team?" Eris nodded, her voice soft. "This kind of encryption isn't from any department I know." The three of them stood in the glow of the drifting lanterns, the hum of quiet streets settling around them. Leora could feel the pull, half curiosity, half dread, as the image shifted again, this time revealing something different. Not stars. Not maps. A message. Only a few words appeared, handwritten in shimmering light. He already knows. He just needs to admit it. Leora's breath caught. The words weren't signed. No sender. No mark. Orion stared at the message, jaw tightening, but not in fear, more like recognition. Eris whispered, "Do you know who sent that?" Orion hesitated, too long. Leora felt the pause like a ripple. He wasn't bewildered. He wasn't confused. He knew something he hadn't shared. Finally, he gently closed the projection and lowered the slate. "I think this was meant for both of us," he said quietly, glancing from Eris to Leora, then letting his gaze settle fully on Leora, but especially for her. Leora blinked. "For me?" Orion nodded. And in that moment, his guarded expression softened again, returning to the warmth she'd seen inside the cafe. "Leora, before all this, before the message, before the interruption, I need you to know something." Her heart fluttered painfully, like it wasn't sure whether to hope or fear. He took a step closer. "I didn't ignore you," he said, voice steady despite the night swirling with uncertainty. "I noticed every moment, every kindness, every time you looked lost in thought when I walked into a room. I noticed. You." Leora felt the world tilt softly, in the gentlest way. She opened her mouth to speak, but Eris shifted again, clearing her throat. "I'm sorry," Eris murmured, "but you might want to see the rest." Orion glanced at her reluctantly. "More?" Eris nodded and expanded the slate again. This time, the projection revealed a countdown, slow, pulsing digits written in glowing silver, but not numbers like any typical device. It wasn't a time or a date. It was a distance. A cosmic measurement. Something approaching. Something getting closer. Something getting closer. Leora stepped forward, voice barely above a whisper. "What is that?" Orion didn't answer right away. His eyes traced the shrinking measurement, and his expression filled with a seriousness that made her stomach tighten. He finally exhaled. "That's the distance of an approaching celestial object, and it's getting closer faster than anything I've studied before." Eris added quietly, "And whatever it is, it's not listed in any registry." Leora felt her heart steady, then accelerate again, a confession waiting in her chest, a truth in his eyes, and now something vast moving in the sky, unknown and uninvited. "Why would someone send this to you?" she asked. Orion turned to her slowly. "Because whoever sent it thinks I'm already involved, and maybe they think we all are." The lanterns overhead flickered softly, wind brushing through their glow. Leora looked from the countdown to Orion, trying to read between every breath he took. Was this danger or destiny? And what did it have to do with the truth she nearly confessed? Orion stepped closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "Leora, before anything else happens, I want to hear the rest of what you were trying to tell me." Her pulse raced. The words trembled again on her tongue. But before she could speak, the countdown pulsed brighter, once, then twice, like a warning heartbeat signaling something they weren't prepared for. All three of them stared up as a faint streak of silver crossed the distant sky. Leora's breath faltered. The confession hovered once more. And the night shifted yet again. The silver streak vanished behind a bank of drifting clouds, but the echo of it lingered in Leora's chest long after the glow faded. She stared at the sky, breath shallow, unsure whether the sight filled her with awe or quiet fear. Orion held the hollow slate steady in his hands, watching the pulsing countdown shrink by another small increment. Even the lanterns overhead seemed to dim, as if the night itself were listening. Eris crossed her arms, trying to steady herself. "I've never seen a reading like that," she whispered. "It's not a comet, not a satellite. Nothing we've cataloged has that kind of trajectory." Leora tore her eyes from the sky and looked at Orion. His expression had changed again, still calm, still focused, but carrying a weight that made her pulse flutter. "Orion, do you know what this could be?" she asked softly. He hesitated, choosing his words with care. "I don't know, but I think someone believes I'm connected to it. Otherwise, they wouldn't have sent the message directly to me." Eris tilted her head. "And the other message, the one about admitting something?" Leora felt her cheeks warm at the memory of the glowing words. She didn't know who had sent that message either, but it had cut straight into the heart of everything she was afraid to say out loud. Orion looked at Leora again, and the tension in his features softened visibly. "Let's step away from the cafe," he murmured, "someplace quiet." They moved toward the overlook, a short walk away, where the city lights shimmered along the horizon like a field of tiny stars. The path was lined with crystalline trees that cast gentle reflections across the pavement. It was peaceful, eerily so, like a calm before something they couldn't name. Once they reached the railing, Orion placed the slate gently on the stone ledge and turned fully toward Leora. "Earlier," he said, "you told me you were afraid speaking the truth would complicate everything." Her breath trembled again. "Yes." "And you thought I would ignore you." There was no judgment in his voice, only sincerity. She nodded slowly. He stepped closer, stopping just a few inches away. "I wouldn't. Not then. Not now." Leora's heartbeat fluttered, quick and uncertain. There was emotion in his voice she wasn't used to hearing, something fragile, something real. "I notice you," he whispered, "more than you think." Settled over her like a warm blanket. Her throat tightened. "I care about you," Leora said softly, finally releasing the truth that had weighed on her for so long. "More than I meant to, more than I expected to." Orion's eyes softened instantly, as if the words reached a place he'd kept closed for too long. "I know," he murmured, "and it matters." Leora blinked, startled. "You know?" He nodded, gaze lowering just slightly. "I kept pretending it was better not to acknowledge it, that I needed to stay focused, that nothing would come from admitting how I felt." Her breath caught, hope rising like a fragile star lifting into view. Eris gave them space, quietly stepping back toward the trees. But Orion didn't look away from Leora. "I wasn't distant because I didn't care," he said. "I was distant because I cared too much and didn't know if you felt the same." Leora felt her knees weaken, emotion swelling gently but deeply through her chest. "I do." Before either of them could say another word, the hollow slate pulsed sharply, bright enough to reflect across their faces. Orion turned, startled. The countdown had accelerated, no longer shrinking slowly, now dropping in rapid, uneasy pulses. Eris hurried back toward them. "That's not possible," she said, voice trembling. "Celestial objects don't change velocity like that." The three of them watched the shimmering numbers pulse faster, almost like they were responding to something nearby. Then the message reappeared, new words forming in the same silver script. "He can't avoid it anymore, and neither can you." Leora felt her breath freeze. Orion's posture stiffened, hands curling slightly against the railing. "What does that mean?" she whispered. The final line appeared, glowing brighter than the rest. "Look up." Slowly. All three of them lifted their eyes toward the sky. And far above, the faint silver streak appeared again, brighter this time. Closer. Moving with purpose. Leora felt a chill ripple through her as realization dawned. This wasn't random. This wasn't chance. Someone, or something. And it was coming straight toward them. The silver streak brightened until it felt like the night itself was holding its breath. Leora stood frozen beside Orion, her heart thudding in soft, uneven beats. Eris gripped the railing tightly, eyes wide, as the sky rippled with faint, shimmering patterns around the approaching light. It wasn't falling. It wasn't drifting. It was arriving. The countdown on the slate pulsed one final time, then faded into silence. Orion stepped forward, shoulders tense but gaze steady. "This was never about a threat," he murmured. "This was a message, a call." "From who?" But before Orion could answer, the silver streak slowed, hovering high above them like a suspended tear of light. The clouds around it swirled into gentle spirals, reflecting its glow until the entire overlook felt washed in pale gold. Eris whispered, "I've never seen anything behave like that. Not naturally." A soft hum filled the air, steady, warm, almost musical. The sound vibrated through the railing, through the pavement, through Leora's skin. It wasn't frightening. It felt like an invitation. The silver object drifted lower, still distant, but close enough now for its shape to take form. Not a ship, not a star, something in between, like a vessel made of light and memory, shifting and reforming with each heartbeat. Orion exhaled slowly, the tension in his features giving way to something deeper, almost familiar. Leora looked up at him. "You recognize it?" He didn't deny it. Instead, he nodded once, as though finally accepting something he had tried to outrun. "When I was younger," he said quietly, "I used to see flashes of things I couldn't explain. Constellations that didn't exist yet. Patterns that appeared in my dreams and then showed up in the sky days later." Eris stared at him. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" He gave a small, almost sad smile. "Who would have believed me?" Leora stepped closer, her shoulder brushing his. "I would have." His expression softened instantly, gratitude warming his eyes. The silver vessel pulsed gently in the sky, casting a faint glow across their faces. A beam of light shimmered downward, not harsh or blinding, but soft, like a celestial spotlight settling over Orion. He didn't move. Eris whispered, "I think it's choosing you." But Orion shook his head. "No, not choosing, acknowledging." Leora's breath trembled. "Why you?" He turned to her then, and the emotion in his gaze made her chest tighten. "Because whatever connects me to that connects you too." Her heart stumbled. "Me?" He took her hand gently, fingers warm against her cold skin. "That message wasn't wrong," he said quietly. "I tried to hide how I felt, push it away, pretend I wasn't drawn to you every time you walked into a room." Her breath caught. "But the more I cared," he continued, "the more those visions intensified, like the sky itself was responding to my choices, to my heart." Eris blinked, stunned. "You're saying the celestial patterns react to your emotions?" Orion nodded. "And this," he motioned to the vessel above, "is the result of all the things I refused to acknowledge." Leora squeezed his hand gently. "And now?" He looked at her with a depth that sent warmth through her entire body. "Now I'm done hiding." The vessel pulsed brighter, reacting to his words. The hum deepened, softening into a gentle resonance that felt almost like approval. A final message shimmered across the hollow slate, even though no one touched it. "You were never meant to face this alone." Orion's fingers tightened around Leora's hand. And then, slowly, gracefully, The vessel began to drift backward, rising higher and higher until the light thinned into the night sky. The spiraled clouds softened. The hum faded. The sky returned to its quiet, star-studded calm. "It's leaving." Orion nodded, eyes following the fading glow. It came to deliver a reminder, nothing more. Leora looked at him softly. "And what reminder is that?" He turned to her, closing the small distance between them. "That some truths shouldn't be avoided, not in the sky, and not in the heart." The warmed her from the inside out. The fear, the uncertainty, the almost confessions, they all settled gently into something steady and bright. Leora lifted her free hand, placing it against his chest. "I'm glad you didn't ignore me tonight." He smiled, a quiet, heartfelt smile that felt like a door finally opening. "I never could," he whispered. "Not with you." The lanterns above flickered gently, as though echoing the emotion between them. Eris stepped away to give them space, a small, nulling smile touching her lips. Leora leaned into the moment, her heart full, her future no longer tangled in hesitation. The sky above them was quiet again, but nothing felt the same. Orion held her hand as though he had been waiting to do so for longer than he could admit, and Leora, for the first time in a long time, felt unafraid of where the night might lead. Everything, confession, connection, the strange celestial visitor, had brought them here. Together. And it was only the beginning.